Hello everybody. You know how long it's been since I posted anything? A literal year. YouTube loves to remind me of that. Somehow in that time, my follower count literally has not changed by more than like 2 people, which is just like bananas. So thank you to everyone who forgot they were subscribed and therefore stuck around, and pour one out for the people who ditched. Oh, ye faithless few. In the time between last summer and this summer, I have got back into cosplay, gotten the plague, got a microphone, which hopefully is making the sound better and not worse. And I got a cat. Ducka. Hi. Look how cute he. Ducka ducka. Gotten hyperfixated on a gay fish movie, on a video game about found family in space, wig making, and a podcast about found family in space for like the 3rd time. I've also gotten saddled with a huge backlog of video content, which I haven't been putting together because it takes effort. That's right, I've actually been filming stuff all this time. So like there are videos coming and probably all out of order, so like get used to seeing my hair in all kinds of various different stages. I've actually drawn very little in the past year. I've mostly been putting my spell slots into crafting and like cosplay crafting stuff. So if that's your jam, then good news. Today, to that effect, I've got a doll customization for you. So I was 20 when Journey, the iconic indie video game, launched. Which is weird because I could have sworn I was in high school at the time. I knew very little about the game. I'd never actually like touched it myself. Never watched any playthroughs, never like couch multiplayered with somebody. At least not until the quarantine of 2020 when PlayStation put it on their like online store for free. While it's a miracle that I've maintained spoiler-free knowledge of the video game for this long, it's kind of wonderful that I did. I'm really glad that I did. Because being able to play through the game blindly and discover it all in like real time made for the most magical, memorable experience. It made me viscerally emotional and provided this like really interesting and delightful demonstration of like humanness, the human experience, the want to socialize and interact with other people, the need to communicate. It was moo, chef's kiss. Moo? Cannot recommend it enough. Although I'm not sure other people are still playing it. I feel like I got in at a time where like many people had picked it up again, so you could really have that experience. If you do play it, you gotta play it online because there's an interactive element. Which is all to say that when B and I stumbled upon this Spectra Vondergast Ghouls Alive doll, who has like no articulation at all, there was only one possible character we could turn her into. The Journey protagonist.
Step 1 was to take a hammer and fix the baby. Because the character we're making just has a black round face and white eyeballs, we don't need Spectra's sharp cheekbones. Also, the doll's head is made of the same hard plastic as her body instead of the usual PVC, which means I can't just pop it off with hot water, so instead we smash! This Spectra has wiring inside of her because she's meant to make noise and glow, which means there was a lot more to her body that I had to modify than with a normal doll. I popped her arms off, which took some wrangling with pliers because they were sharp. And then removed the lower half of her legs because I didn't need distinct feet. Then I went to Sanding Town to get rid of all the factory codes and the seam lines on the dolls, which y'all know I hate. The sanding block is rougher than I'd normally use, but I knew I'd be doing mods, so I wasn't too concerned about the scratches showing. Based on the length of the existing shins, I cut lengths of wire for her new lower legs and feet. The Journey protagonist seems to just have like stubs for feet, so that's what we were going for. The twisted up wires were jammed into Spectra's knees with epoxy glue and left to harden. I had to tilt her also so it didn't ooze everywhere. After that, I beefed up the armatures with smashed down aluminum foil. I tried really hard to press it tight to minimize gapping between the layers, but it still lifted up around the hip. In retrospect, I probably should have used some glue. Once both legs were shaped out, I started putting air-dry clay to the body in order to neutralize the silhouette. Most of the character is going to be under a robe, but I felt like the alien nature of the protagonist would be better served if they didn't have identifiable titties. Afterwards came the struggle of trying to apply air-dry clay to the legs. now that I've had some experience with epoxy sculpt, I'd never again try clay. It's far too crumbly and difficult to smooth out, and I wasn't able to make the layers as thin as I wanted to. But I did my best to make them work. I forgot to film it, but I also made the doll a new head, which was basically fabric scraps wrapped in aluminum foil that were then clayed over. Spectre turned out a little bobble-headed, kinda looks like a balloon, but oops, too late to change it now! Next came painting. I used a simple black acrylic here, which initially I was watering down, but in later passes, I just kinda shrug emoji'd about it and used it straight out of the bottle. The pink yarn on the doll's neck allowed me to hang her to dry, but it did also catch on the paint in places and make for some necessary patch jobs. Maybe doing one side of the doll at a go would work better next time. I'd painted on some white eyes with gouache pretty early on, but I had to change them later, so we'll get to that. Bee started with Delightful's Christmas cape pattern as a base for the cloak, but found with her first take in the outfit that the shape was gonna need some modification. The shapes weren't exactly right, and lacked the cat ear details that the Journey protagonist has. So she drew new shapes based on the original pattern that included those little pointies, and an outward swoop to the bottom of the hood to give it a second try. She also cut liner pieces out of this really fun red glimmer stretch fabric that we used previously for Loop's Umbra staff. Unfortunately, Bee realized after cutting the second pattern that it needed to be mirrored for the cat ear shapes to work, and that the back part of the hood should have been cut on the fold so that it wouldn't have a seam down the middle. She had to cut a few pieces again. The cape was much more straightforward. Bee cut a front and a back of the skirt and lined the sides and hem with thin wire so that we could pose it. The doll can't move much, so its clothing moves instead. Bee stitched the wire in with a red thread so that it would be less noticeable on the outside of the clothing. In test fitting the hood and the cloak together, it was clear that the hole for the character's face needed to be widened, and Bee put wire into the opening to keep it wide enough for the little eyes to be easily seen.
It's just his little eyes like, hello. 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 So cute. So good.
After that was the scarf, which was super easy after all the previous struggle. Bee cut 2 long strips of fabric, lined them with wire, and then stitched them to the hood. Once the actual outfit was constructed, it was time for paint. I initially started using gouache because I had a perfect color match for the skirt's triangles and the texture of the paint was smoother than acrylic, but then I realized pretty quickly that the water-based nature of the gouache was gonna get messy really quick. I picked the cloak up at one point and the moisture of my palm started making the paint run. So I quickly switched to a blend of red and blue acrylics, which were much more reliable. After that, the gold trim. Because of these immensely crappy paintbrushes I was working with and the thickness of the gold acrylic paint, these lines were way less graceful than I kinda hoped they'd be. The scarf, in particular, having some strange bends to it because of the wire inside, came out a little messy. But I decided along the way that maybe the gold detailing is made of actual gold, and the technology in the Journey world isn't at the point of being able to refine the metal into something super smooth. Old civilizations had lumpy gold. Why can't I? It adds charm. After final assembly, I actually went back and did some beading on the cloak to give the character more pizzazz, repainted the eyes, and patched the black paint a few dozen times. Bee and I are both big fans of using what we have, or what we've pulled from the trash, in our crafting, so finding a role for this inarticulate doll was really exciting. I do wish I'd had access to epoxy sculpt while sculpting the body, because oh boy, I would not recommend air dry clay. And I probably should have watered down the gold paint so that it wasn't as blobby. But, you know, make and learn.
I hope you guys enjoyed this, and it's really good to see you all again. Stay tuned for another couple doll videos, some OOAK making. That one I'm really excited about. Just trust me, it's gonna be good. And probably like a vlog or two. Also, let me know if there's anything in particular you'd like to see in the future. Also, legitimately, I really do appreciate those of you who stuck around all this time, whether because you legitimately forgot you were subscribed or because you showed up and subscribed while I was on hiatus. And if you enjoyed this video, you can like press the buttons that say that you did, or if you'd like, substooby, because I will hopefully be more on top of this. Anyway, I love you, okay, bye! Got back into cosplay. Ooh. Ah. Wee! Wee! Oh my god, it's so hot. It's so top heavy. It's also very fluffy. It needs to be brushed. I've got a big backlog of videos. I just gotta like do stuff with them, so I do have content. I have the content, please. Stay around. Gotten hyperfixated on a gay space movie. No. Because I should be around more often in the next little bit. I say. Not knowing if this is the truth or not. I could be lying. We just don't know. It's been really hot, so he's sleeping. But he says hello. You don't know it yet, but he's like, hi. This is him waving.